Hello, Tales from the Road watchers, and thank you for joining me on this journey through one of my favorite cities, Budapest. I know a lot about Hungary. Many of you don't know this, but I actually studied political science as my undergraduate degree, and I actually wrote an honors thesis for my degree on a conflict here in Hungary. So I would love to tell you what I know about it. I want to discuss current politics, a little bit of the history, and also why I think Budapest is one of the coolest cities that you can visit. It's so much more than a backpacker hotspot, and so much more than a place to get drunk for cheap. So if that sounds good, let's do it. Budapest. I actually can't believe I'm back here. So basically I'm headed to Amman, Jordan right now, and I found a specific ticket that basically had me stop over in Budapest for about 14 hours. So the good news for, oh my God, I know exactly where I am. The good news for you guys is you get a video about one of my favorite, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, Budapest. I can reminisce, maybe I'll get a little personal in this one. And I'd love to tell you about the politics and what's going on here. So let's get into it. It's really, really cold. I haven't been in a really wintry place in quite a while. It's about -3 degrees Celsius right now, and it's just the middle of the day. This place is known for having a very short daytime, so we're gonna be advantageous. We're gonna see a lot in a short period of time. I'm gonna see how much I can get in 1 hour into this video. So my first memories of Hungary, coming here as a traveler, I came here as a backpacker, and then I worked at some hostels here for a while, was just how strange everything here is, but how familiar it also is. The one thing I truly love about Hungary, which I'll start is the language. Every word in Hungarian is incredibly long. And to prove my point, here is the egészségfejlesztési pont. Pont maybe is like bridge or point maybe. And I know egészségedre. That's the only word I know in Hungarian, egészségedre. If you're gonna learn anything from this today, egészségedre, cheers. And the language is so strange, and it goes back to the Hungarian people. And who are the Hungarian people? Well, let me tell you. The Hungarians, also called the Magyars. This country, the real name of it is not Hungary, it's Magyarország, which I find amazing. So the Magyars descend from the ancient Huns. That's like at least one theory. The coolest part about Hungary for me is that their language is completely different than any other language in Europe besides the Finnish and Estonian languages. They come from a family called Uralic. Uralic, like the Ural Mountains, is a very specific non-Indo-European language family, which means that the Huns, or at least the languages that they're speaking, the Hungarians, are completely atypical for the region, and it's smack dab in the center of Central Europe, which is probably the strangest part for me. So they are European, but they are totally also not. Of course, culturally they are, but they're that outlier in almost every way, which is, you know, what we love and what we hate about Hungary. I don't think this is the video I want to get too deeply into the history, but the main point I want to speak about the Hungarians is that they were empire builders and Central European players for a very long time. And when you walk around the streets of Budapest specifically, you'll notice some very large similarities to other imperial cities that you'll find in Europe. Of course, Budapest was one of the central facets of culture, of power, and of kings and queens and all that stuff for a long period of time, but it really came to its height during the Austro-Hungarian Empire, where the seat in Vienna and the seat in Budapest were arguably two of the most important cities in the entire world. Walking around the center of old Budapest, you're assaulted with just absolutely gorgeous buildings from the late 1800s, early 1900s, in these beautiful Eastern European imperial style. The entire city center is built up like this. And if you go across the river, then you'll find another side of the city, the Buda side. Right now I'm on the Pest side. The Buda side is a little bit older, so we'll walk to the river and check it out. I swear to God, it is only 2 p.m. and it looks like it's 6:30 p.m. and it's already -5 degrees. This is why I love the cities of Central Europe, but I do not want to live in the cities of Central Europe, because as amazing as the summers are, the winters are awful. The dark, the cold, the rain, the snow. Who would want to go outside? My hands are freezing. God damn. Kunik versus Elogisius. So the legend that I've learned is that there's two sides of Budapest. There's Buda and there's Pest. They were two separate cities founded at marginally separate times. And as they grew, they became one. And now you have beautiful Imperial style buildings everywhere. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Catholic and Protestant churches. Everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And the best thing you can do, honestly, in my opinion, is go find yourself a bridge and get a nice vantage point. Get a nice little vantage point. That's the important part. We're on the middle of the bridge now. So this is Buda. Buda, you can tell because of this nice statue over here. And then if you look over this way, I wish I was on this side of the bridge, but I'm not. As you can see, the National Gallery, as well as the bastions, the Fisherman's Bastion. Beautiful, beautiful area. The Pest side is a little bit more bohemian. It has the old Jewish quarter. It has a lot of the partying area. It has a lot of the bars. It's just a massive city now. It's the biggest city in Hungary by far. So you can really explore the little alleyways and the little, just the ancient history of the city. It's so old and so interesting. Deeply, deeply interesting. So, part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire takes us to World War I. The Austro-Hungarians were strong, but they were also fractured because they had this dual seat of power. Sometimes Budapest and Vienna couldn't get in agreement on what was going to happen. And also something I learned interestingly about their military is that they included many of the other states around it, right? Slovakia, Czech Republic, you know, parts of northern Serbia. And an interesting thing was that when they were fighting wars, sometimes their own armies couldn't talk to each other because no one spoke a mutual language, because Hungarian and German were both the official languages of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So many people knew one or both, but also very few people learned Hungarian outside of Hungary, and very few people learned Serbian outside of Serbia. So it was a hodgepodge. So this was like the center of the hodgepodge, but a beautiful center indeed. So after World War I, Austro-Hungary breaks up. Hungary gets established as an actual state, and I'm gonna skip over this. I'm not the super historian on Hungarian politics. I didn't really prepare myself to explain this that well, but basically they joined the socialist Eastern Bloc. So coming out of World War II, as the world is re-subdivided, the Hungarians join in with the old Soviet Union, and they get all of that power. So when you go to the outside of this very, very beautiful city, the outskirts, or even just like the normal districts that people live in today, you'll find socialist block housing, you'll find projects, you'll find a lot of buildings built in the 1960s. One interesting thing for me is that the Hungarians are not simply contained in this beautiful country, but there are ethnic Hungarians all around in each surrounding country, over the borders in Ukraine, over the borders in Slovakia, and especially over the borders in Romania, where there's actually a there's a Hungarian autonomous province that borders. So one thing that I want to talk about, because socialist, East Bloc, all that stuff, is not the focus. The focus is now. What's happening now? What is Hungary's status in the EU, and how are they going about it today? The Eastern Bloc falls, right? Talking about the end of the 80s. Just like many other countries in this region that had a socialist republic at some point, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Yugoslavia. 60s and 70s were filled with revolutions, and in the late 80s or mid 80s started to fall apart as the Soviet Union collapsed. So Hungary became one of the first, let's say, Central European or socialist bloc countries to join the EU, and things were looking really good for them to progress. I guess as a strong member of the European Union, they threw off a lot of the shackles that were put on freedom of speech and all the things that had happened here during the socialist times. They didn't adopt the euro. They still have the Hungarian forint, which I think is pretty cool. They reestablished a national identity, and they tried to reorganize their land in a positive way for both Hungarians, but also being a good member of the European Union. So we can say that move into the EU went pretty strongly. You know, they bolstered their economy, they opened their borders to a lot of trade, they got the EU flag flying everywhere. Things were going pretty well, arguably, until the Syrian refugee crisis, which was started in 2012. When ISIS got into Syria, it blew up. You guys know the story. But Europe was hit incredibly hard with the Syrian refugee crisis on a policy front, because Europe was confronting all of these refugees that were coming into their borders, and people had no idea what to do. So these new kind of, let's say, EU countries, or the established members, had different policies. And this is really what I talk about in my thesis, is the difference between the German open door policy, which many criticize, but which many saw it as a guiding light for humanitarian kind of like help within the world, and then the Hungarian ideology. And it all starts with a man named Viktor Orban. You see, old Viktor is a nationalist. He loves the idea of a Hungarian state made for Hungarians. And while that was not his rhetoric when he got elected directly, that has become his rhetoric over time. And his national, I'm not sure what the party name is, but his national party is very focused on Hungarian issues and putting Hungary first, both within the borders and, as I said, in the enclaves outside of Hungary with the ethnic minorities in Romania, Ukraine, and Slovakia. There's even been talks of incorporating those regions of other countries into Hungary, into this greater Hungarian state, which obviously Ukraine, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and other countries that border Hungary, not very excited about that, since the EU is supposed to be this whole idea of, you know, one Europe. It doesn't really matter, the borders, we're all European, right? So here's where the first controversy comes in, and this is how Viktor Orban really became incredibly popular in some people's eyes and incredibly not popular in other people's eyes. So as Syrian refugees were flooding across the border from Greece into Central Europe, basically the Hungarians shut the entire border with fences, sprayed refugees with water cannons, and were very inhospitable, kind of spitting in the face of the common EU policy. Now, the long-term effect of that is it bolstered this nationalist sentiment that you find here, especially in the political front here in Hungary. The people of Budapest might have different ideas, of course, because it's an international city and there's people from all over the world living here. But a lot of the people in the countryside and people in smaller cities really appreciated this nationalistic identity. And I would say that both Hungary and now Poland, who's also pushing very conservative and very nationalist, are the two front runners for not ruining the EU, but for poking holes and cracks into EU policy, because basically, you know, policy that's being made in Brussels and being experienced in Hungary are one thing and another thing. I think what we can also say about old Viktor is that he is a man who likes to poke his finger at people, and he's very unapologetic with his words. So he's been caught on the record saying very racist things. He's been caught on the record saying very questionable things with regards to human rights. He's been caught on the record saying Hungary should be a Christian national state and that Muslims are just not welcome here. Obviously, as the EU is an open place for everybody, it's very hard to see where Hungary is going to mix in, and it seems like all of the policy coming from Brussels at the moment, the Hungarian, at least politically, are not floating in the same old boat. So from this beautiful square, I will say, what is the future of Hungary? What's going to happen here? That's a good question. I really don't know, but I would argue that if Hungary continues on the same path that it's on today, it will be the first country to exit the European Union. Poland seems like it's kind of pushing for it, not literally, but it seems like there's a lot of calls for a Brexit type thing here in Hungary. We'll see what happens after Viktor Orban leaves office. That's always very important, because with political change comes some different political actions. So I love Hungary. This is a great country. This city has so many beautiful memories for me, whether it's coming here with my friends in 2015, my first time in Eastern Europe, or coming alone, the first time backpacking solo, making great friends here, drinking their ridiculously cheap beers and eating their very delicious goulash. Hungary has always been a place that's felt very comfortable for me. And actually, my own family, well, a chunk of my family descends from Hungarian Jews that fled, you know, a little bit pre-World War II. So this city also has a lot of meaning for my family as well. And it's a place that is so special. So I'm all for Hungary doing its own thing, but I don't want them to ruin this country for the visitors, for Europe, and for the world, because it's such a nice place to be. It's such a nice place to experience. And if you're going to visit any city in Europe, I would say Vienna, Budapest, and Prague, the Central European, I call them the Central European trifecta, are amazing cities to visit. They're all so unique, so beautiful, and in the same way, but also like very differently. I know this video is going to piss some people off, and I know I'm unapologetically opinionated when it comes to stuff, but that's just who I am, you know? This is not a first impressions of Budapest video. It's just not. That's just not the traveler I am. You know, I've been to over 60 countries now, and I know enough, and I've studied enough, and I've read enough to give you guys my unadulterated opinion. So if you like that about the videos, make sure to comment, and if you have any questions relating to Hungary, to politics, to all that stuff, I can also, of course, post a follow-up video. And I'm even thinking of doing a podcast series specifically about Central European politics. The last questions we always have to ask are, is it safe? Yeah, I think it's pretty safe. I think Budapest is probably the most dangerous place you'll be. Just, you know, make sure to buy the tram tickets or else you'll get a fine. And just always watch out for pickpockets, but Hungarian people seem super nice. This is a really international backpacking city, so you'll find lots of foreigners here. So there's always scammers around, but that's just, it just is what it is. And is it cheap? Yes, the Hungarian forint is a pretty good deal. You get, compared to the euro, a lot of things are cheaper. You know, if you're paying like, let's say 12 euros in Paris for something, you're probably paying like 7 euros here. So you get a nice little discount. Cheap beer, cheap food, good people, beautiful buildings. There's really like nothing to dislike except that it's almost dark at 2 p.m. and my hands are freezing off. Other than that, pretty solid place. So guys, to end this very open video of my unapologetic opinion of Hungary, I want to ask you guys, what do you think is going to happen in Hungary? What do you think is going to happen in the European Union? What are your hopes for the future for this beautiful place if you visited? And what are you most excited to see if you haven't been here? I can only recommend it. 5 stars out of 5 stars. I love Budapest. So from me, from the city of Budapest, from Tales from the Road, that's gonna be it for today. I'll see you guys in Akaba, Jordan. Very excited about it. And I'm gonna give you one last Egészségedre from Magyarország. That's Hungary.